a crazy week 4 in the NFL, and because of that, you're going to have some nice options on your waiver wire. This might be the last time all year that on the exact same waiver wire, you can get a team's new number 1 wide receiver and a team's new number 1 running back. So it's time to start spending some of these waiver priorities, and let's look at Woody Marks of the Houston Texans. This is a young lad. A 4th round rookie. He comes to the Houston Texans. He was buried on a depth chart with Dameon Pierce. Then they signed Nick Chubb. Joe Mixon's there. All those guys are now gone. Well, Nick Chubb's still there, right? But you get my point that Woody Marks this past week overtook the backfield, and it's only week 4. This reminds me in some ways of like Bucky Irving last year overtaking that backfield slowly but surely. 17 carries for 69 yards. Like that alone is good. He finds the end zone. But then you scroll down here, Woody Marks, overall, also number 2 receiver on the team behind Nico Collins, 4 catches, 50 yards. We know this Texans team, even with Christian Kirk back these last couple of weeks, before that when Kirk was out, the rookie wide receivers and then Xavier Hutchinson weren't doing anything. It has basically been Nico Collins and no one else. Woody Marks has been getting involved the past couple of weeks as a pass catcher. He has 4 catches for 50 yards, also scores a receiving touchdown in this game, so a multi-touchdown game for the mid-round rookie. Now, this was a player that we flagged last week in this video. We flagged him in the newsletter as well as somebody you should try and pick up for like, $2 or $3 if you're in a fab budget league, which most leagues should be, or at least are, before he starts to become way more expensive. Now you probably got to spend like your entire fab budget, because it seems pretty clear now that he's becoming at least, I would say, like a 60% running back share, if not more, in this backfield. Dameon Pierce has been a healthy scratch for weeks now. He's not involved. Nick Chubb, outside of a 25-yard touchdown run in a game a couple of weeks ago, where outside of that carry, he has not looked good at all this season. He's an older running back. He's had multiple serious injuries in his career, right? And he doesn't catch passes when Woody Marks does. Basically, Nick Chubb is very limited. Now, for the first 3 games of the year, Nick Chubb was the clear starting running back. 51% of the snaps. He had 64% of the rush attempts. There was just nobody else really threatening him. The rookie Woody Marks was slowly getting brought along as he was playing in his first ever NFL games. But by week 4, it all changed. Because as you can see right here, Woody Marks up top, he ends up leading the backfield, playing 58% of the snaps. Leads the backfield, seeing 52% of the rush attempts and also 44% of the routes run. So he was operating as a clear 3-down back in all the key situations in this game, ahead of Nick Chubb, ahead of Dare Ogunbowale, who in the past has been a pass-catching running back for this team. In week 4, he only saw 2% of the snaps, which matters because it seems like Woody Marks is taking over all the passing game work, and now, as of week 4, some of that early down work and a lot of it as well. And honestly, his play style is kind of a perfect fit for this team. Like, you're having an offensive line that has been struggling, but you have a guy in Woody Marks who has speed to get to the edge. This is a player who in college football had a 1,100-yard season last year, averaged almost 6 yards per carry, was more so known for what he did as a pass catcher in college. Look at this. Between Mississippi State and USC, seasons of 83 catches, insane for a running back, 48, insane for a college running back, 23 is very strong, and then 47. The dude was averaging like 60 receptions per season as a running back in college. If you're a good passing running back in college, you're averaging like 25 catches per season. 60 per season is nuts. And then there's also the fact that we got some of these glimpses in the preseason, as you can see here from Sideliner Sports. Best pass blocker in the Texans is apparently Woody Marks. He buried this guy this past week. You can see that on the film right here, the All-22 film. Basically, we were getting glimpses of this as well. It's good to see. Basically buries him, just like he says right there, a guy who weighs an extra, 20 to 30 pounds more than him. Preseason, we saw it. They were talking about it in training camp that this guy can pass protect, and now we're seeing it in legitimate games in the pros. And all of this matters because Joe Mixon, as of right now, there's still not any positive news. Actually, we just got an update for the first time in like 3 weeks. This was as of Monday, so I'm recording this on Monday. So today, by the time you're seeing this, it'll be a day or 2 old. Joe Mixon remains without a certain timeline for return, when or if he'll even return this season. Now, I have been on the record as saying that I was privy of some information that I will not reveal any sources for reasons of, I was told not to, but that in the DMs, I was told Joe Mixon's injury, this was before the season, is a lot more serious than the reports are currently saying of maybe he'll be only out for 2 to 4 weeks. Since then, he's now been out for 6 to 8 weeks. And if you read between the lines, you'll see that he ended up getting a surgery that the team didn't want him to get, and now he's way behind schedule, so there's a chance that he doesn't even play football this year. As of right now, there's no timeline for him to return, so Woody Marks looks like the RB1 on the Texans for the future, or at least the time being. We also got this quote as recent as the past 24 hours from the head coach DeMeco Ryans on Woody Marks' breakout game. Excited to see the way he showed up in that game, and I'm also excited to see how much more he can handle. They know what they have in this backfield. They know that Nick Chubb is going to get them 3 yards per carry and contribute nothing as a pass catcher. They know that Woody Marks has the ability to get them 5 yards per carry, create explosive runs, and also contribute and be versatile in pass protection and pass catching. So while you still can, I don't care if you have to spend the rest of your fab budget at this point. We're entering week 5. There's not that many good players each week available on the waiver wire. Try and get Woody Marks. You can literally start him as soon as week 5. Now, the next situation situation we have to talk about is obviously what happened to Malik Nabers. We covered this a little bit in the Monday recap Everything Just Changed video on the channel. Be sure to check that out as well. But of course, if you're watching this by now, it has been confirmed that Malik Nabers tore his ACL. The good news, if we're going to take any silver lining from this, it was a clean ACL tear. There was a non-contact injury, which of course the season is over, but it wasn't a multi-ligament tear. At least that's from the reports most likely that we're getting right now, unless some more news comes out, which means this should be like a 9 to 10, maybe 11th month recovery. Week 1 next year, Malik Nabers should be back. It sucks for this year, but it's not going to keep him out like Brandon Ayuk right now for half the season. Half the season that following year, that is. So now the Giants wide receiver room looks like this. No Malik Nabers. It's going to be Wan'Dale Robinson and Darius Slayton as your top 2 wide receivers, at least in theory and on paper based on usage these last couple of weeks. Now, we know Wan'Dale Robinson has been good this year. He has a game where he had 142 yards and a touchdown, although that was against a bad Cowboys defense, and that was in a game where Russell Wilson was just launching moon balls. Now a totally new quarterback, the rookie Jackson Dart, doesn't play the same way by any means as Russell Wilson. That's why he's out there and they wanted to change the offense. But we do know that even with a quarterback who doesn't throw it downfield and checks it down more like Jackson Dart might in an RPO, a run pass option offense, 140 targets last year with a somewhat similar, nowhere near the same play style as Daniel Jones, but a more mobile quarterback, 140 targets with him. So hopefully we can maybe find somewhat of a balancing act here, that we're not getting just these 3-yard check down targets, maybe somewhere around that 8 to 12 yard range. That could lead to some upside for Wan'Dale Robinson, at the very worst as a flex option for you in lineups. But the interesting play here, and the guy who will probably be way cheaper if he's available on your waiver wire compared to Wan'Dale Robinson and even Woody Marks, who we just talked about, is Darius Slayton. Now, he led the team. It wasn't impressive. Team high 3 catches, 44 yards this past week with Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart, I would say for the most part, looked like a quality player in his first NFL start, especially considering what he was getting thrown into in this offense and losing Malik Nabers. But it's not like he was lighting it up throwing for 300 yards. So this 3 catches for 44 yards isn't going to impress anybody. But the interesting part about this is we have a 2-game sample last year when Malik Nabers missed time of what that looked like for Darius Slayton. He averaged 19 fantasy points on 11 targets per game and 7 catches per game in those contests. And in that 2-game stretch, he was a top 15 to borderline top 10 fantasy wide receiver. Now, of course, that's just a 2-game stretch, but I'm actually trying to get Darius Slayton in the Flock League, which many of you watch the Flock League. You can check out that YouTube channel where we have 12 total fantasy creators in there competing against each other. In the Flock League, Darius Slayton's available. There's like nobody available in that league. So right now, he is a clear priority for me moving forward, and I'm sure a lot of people. I'm completely fine putting a minimum like $19, upwards of, I don't know why I picked 19, 15, 20, use a round number, right? But upwards of like $40. And if you're in a competitive league where you don't think anything good's going to come available for the next 3 or 4 weeks, and now that bye weeks are here, put 50, 60 bucks, right? This is a guy who could potentially go out next week and see double-digit targets. Now, again, it's not the perfect situation. Like, he does have a rookie quarterback who's going to be a little bit more suspect compared to Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson, the other quarterbacks on this Giants roster, when it comes to like throwing downfield with accuracy and poise, and hopefully he gets some time to throw now that left tackle Andrew Thomas is back and looking healthy. But in college, Jackson Dart, if we look at his college stats at Ole Miss, he went out there last year. He did throw for 4,200 yards. He did average 10.8 yards per attempt. There's a reason why the Giants traded up in the first round to get him. He was propelling Trey Harris, who's now in the NFL with the Chargers during their time together at Ole Miss. Jackson Dart and Trey Harris. Harris was on pace to lead all of college football last year before injury in receiving yards per game. So he was able to like have a number 1 wide receiver. Of course, this is all kind of, college to the NFL, but we saw a little bit of a path of it in college for that type of prototypical receiver, Trey Harris. Maybe Darius Slayton moves into that role. So I do like picking up both of these guys. Robinson's rostered in a lot more leagues than Slayton. They're the only 2 guys that right now make sense to me. Theo Johnson did see a 30% target share in the game once Malik Nabers left. Could be interesting if you're in a bind and in a pinch at the tight end spot with some guys on bye or maybe injured. You can look there in some deeper leagues. Now, before we completely leave, I do want to also say that Jackson Dart himself is also a player that's worth rostering, especially with bye weeks coming up in deeper leagues for sure, especially Superflex. Like, again, we mentioned the passing yards weren't really there. 13 of 20, 111 yards. This wasn't a real NFL drop back offense. It was kind of like a college offense. But the big thing, we know he's mobile. 10 carries, 54 yards, had the 18-yard rushing touchdown on the first drive of the game, led to an 80-yard rushing score. Hopefully he gets more time, and now moving forward, he's somebody that is at least, I would say, out of all the guys available on the waiver wire, right? I would say maybe Matthew Stafford's out there. He's been looking good, especially with Puka Nacua balling out. But other than that, like, it's right up there with Jackson Dart as the guys because of that mobility that I'd be interested in adding on waivers at the quarterback position if you are really desperate for a QB. Now, I will quickly say before we get into this next wide receiver who just had a monster game in week 4, if you want my free top 50 rankings for this week, that's right here to dominate your fantasy matchups, win your matchups ideally this week. You just enter your email right here. It's linked up down below, or you could just type in fantasyrankingsfree.com. It takes you to that page I just showed you. You enter your email. I send you the top 50 rankings. Just be sure to check your spam and promotional folders just in case. If you want the entire 150, not just the top 50 for this week and every single week of the year, my waiver wire tools, my trade tool, and a whole lot more, well, you can check that out. That's why I built the Fantasy Blueprint. It's what I use in all my leagues to win my weekly matchups, and over 10,000 people are currently using in theirs. Especially if you're like 1-3, 2-2, you don't have a winning record, or you barely have a winning record, this will be the tool that will help you turn your season around. You can check that out and learn more about the Fantasy Blueprint with the link in the description below, or by heading to jointheblueprint.com. Now, that wide receiver who had a massive week 4 game, it felt like everybody did in that Cowboys-Packers wacky overtime 40-40 tie game, Romeo Doubs. Romeo Doubs is a player who's been in these videos before over the past couple of seasons. We got to see Romeo Doubs now in his second start without Jayden Reed. There's still no out there right now, Christian Watson. There's a chance Tucker Kraft is still a little bit banged up and limited by his injury. So what did Romeo Doubs go out there and do? He went out there and he just dominated the Cowboys. It seems like every time he plays the Cowboys, a couple of years ago in the playoff, he had multiple touchdowns, 6 catches, 58 yards, 3 touchdowns. He led this Packers wide receiver room with 8 targets, the entire offense with 8 targets. He looked good in this game. He had multiple red zone touchdowns. He also has other red zone touchdowns this season. He's now up to 7 red zone. Let me show you right here. Coming into this game, Romeo Doubs ended up having 3 red zone targets across 3 games. So he's getting 1 per game, right? In this game, he had 4 more red zone targets. 2 of them went for touchdowns. 1 almost went for a 3rd touchdown late in the game when they tried to seal the deal in the 4th quarter. So now Romeo Doubs ranks top 10 in red zone usage. For the most part, Matt LaFleur, Jordan Love, over the past couple of years, they trust Romeo Doubs, both his hands in key situations like 3rd and 4th down to move the chains and in the red zone. He's always been the player running the most routes on this team, 87%, even though like Matthew Golden and Jayden Reed get the hype these past couple of seasons. It's just Doubs going out there running the most routes on the team, typically seeing the most targets on the team, depending on the week, 22%. Now that target share, it was 8 this past week in a game that went to a wacky overtime. A lot of the times the Packers are running the ball a ton. They're not throwing more than 30 times in a game. So even if you're leading your team in targets, it's only 5 or 6. But if you're getting so much red zone usage, it's worthwhile and should be rostered in most league types. And if we date back to last season from week 6 on, when Romeo Doubs got healthy, came back from a personal matter, he was, and a lot of people were like, oh, he's being a head case. No, it was a personal matter, right? It was a personal matter is why he missed practice, not because he was skipping practice. 11.5 fantasy points per game. This is what you're going to get out of Romeo Doubs. He was averaging 6 targets and 48 yards per game, had some touchdown upside. Like, if you're adding him off your waivers right now, and just be aware, the Packers do have a week 5 bye, so you can't use him until week 6. Look, if you're going to add him, you're probably getting somewhere between 10 and 15 points per game. This is not a league winner, but most of the time you're not finding league winners on the waiver wire. That's why those guys weren't drafted. They were on the waivers. Should also be mentioned that at some point this season, pretty soon, probably after the Packers bye a couple of weeks or so, Christian Watson will return, and then Jayden Reed will return, so it's just going to get even murkier here. So this is really just for like the next 3 or 4 weeks for Romeo Doubs, that his outlook looks appealing. The schedule is also pretty soft as well for Green Bay, for what that's worth. Okay, let's go to the next situation here. This has to do with right here. The Cleveland Browns, Cedric Tillman left the game in week 4 with a hamstring injury and did not return. Now, if you're leaving a game with a hamstring injury as a wide receiver, on average, according to SportsMD Analysis, Deepak Chona over on Twitter, be sure to follow him, wide receivers will miss it on average 2 to 3 weeks. Now, if it's more severe, it could be IR, 4 to 6 weeks, like maybe Mike Evans is currently dealing with, CeeDee Lamb, these types of things. Sorry, CeeDee Lamb is an ankle, but Mike Evans, last year Mike Evans as well, and Nico Collins and Adam Thielen hit IR 4 to 6 weeks with these grade 2 hamstring strains. So with Cedric Tillman being out, the player who at least stepped up this past week, and honestly, there's a lot to like about Isaiah Bond from a football standpoint. He went undrafted in 2025 for personal matters that he was dealing with off the field, but then he signs with the Browns as an undrafted free agent on a pretty thin depth chart, and he's already playing at this point. Led the team this past week with 3 catches for 58 yards, averaging 19.3 yards per reception, and we slowly started seeing this coming on, right? Last week in a game where Cedric Tillman was healthy, Bond operated as the wide receiver 3 in this game. 58% of the snaps, 13% of the targets. Fast forward to this week, he ends up running 71% of the routes in this game with Cedric Tillman hurt, seeing 19% of the targets. So if there's a guy on the waiver wire right now seeing 20% of the targets in an offense like the Browns, like we saw this past week, that's probably going to be trailing in a lot of games this year. That's pretty appealing, especially because this is a good college prospect. Like Isaiah Bond was probably going to go in at least the 3rd round. There's a chance people steamed him up to the 2nd round of this draft before the personal matter stuff started to come out. Like, you look at his overall stats from Alabama and Texas, and last year he was supposed to be this massive prospect at Texas. He dealt with some injuries. He came back, just wasn't the same, but he was averaging 16 yards per reception there at Texas. He did have a nice second season at Alabama right here before transferring. A 24% target share, despite dealing with some serious competition at Alabama, is good, right? You're playing at some of the top programs in college football in the SEC in Texas and Alabama, and you're producing. He goes undrafted, but don't look at him as your typical undrafted free agent. This was at worst a 4th round pick, might have been a 2nd or 3rd round pick without those personal matters. So he's worth a couple of bucks on your waiver wire, and so is Kenneth Gainwell, though you should know that Kenneth Gainwell is also on bye in week 5, so you can't really use him until week 6. And by that time, this guy right here, Jaylen Warren, who was a late scratch heading into the game on week 4 overseas, well, he'll probably be back by week 6. Like, odds are it was like a pregame warm-up thing that he went out there and tested and was like, it still feels a little bit off. So if he was that close to playing in this game, like at first he said he was going to expect to play and then he's just out, odds are it wasn't a re-injury. They were just like, it feels a little bit off. We're overseas. The body's not quite right. Same time zone, all that type of stuff. Well, let's just wait till we get back after the bye. So I do think the Steelers are playing it safe, which does open up like a buy low window on Jaylen Warren as he enters his bye and he missed week 4. But Kenneth Gainwell took full advantage. 19 carries, 99 yards, multiple touchdowns, all career highs. He then has 6 catches for 35 yards, 6 receptions as well. Also a career high. Best fantasy performance by far of his career when he's normally been a 2nd or 3rd string running back on the Philadelphia Eagles. Now on the Steelers, goes for 30 fantasy points and finishes as a top 5, not just running back, overall player in week 4. So that's good to see. He clearly now, rest of season, you have to put him ahead of the 3rd round pick, Caleb Johnson. Like Caleb Johnson in this game, despite them not having their starting running back who had been a workhorse before this in Jaylen Warren, only sees 6 carries for 22 yards. Operates as the clear backup in this game, meaning he's the clear 3rd string once Jaylen Warren is back. So you could add Kenneth Gainwell. Just a reminder, like we said, their next game is not till October 12th in a tougher matchup against the Browns, right? So odds are Kenneth Gainwell or Jaylen Warren is back by then. And if that's the case, Gainwell probably goes back into a situation, unless this made him earn more volume, but probably in a situation where he's only seeing like 6 to 8, maybe at most 10 touches. But as Ryan Heath points out here on Twitter, like this Steelers backfield is now averaging 26.8 weighted opportunities per game, which would have ranked 2nd in the NFL last year behind only the Lions. So what does this mean? It just means that Arthur Smith in this offense, they're running the ball a ton right now. They're getting a lot of positive opportunities in the red zone as well, this backfield. So if Jaylen Warren was to miss more time or go down again, Kenneth Walker is a running back who literally looks like a borderline top 15 running back, now just on your roster. So he should not be available in 12-team formats. Pick him up if you can. Now, the next player who is like a stash candidate, but slowly seeing a way bigger role is Kendre Miller, and it is finally starting to happen a little bit for Kendre Miller, a guy who battled so many different injuries, who was put in the doghouse in previous seasons on this Saints team, but now he's finally getting at least more usage, staying healthy, not fumbling, and he's looking great out there. This past week, Kendre Miller, there was no Alvin Kamara injury. Kamara had 15 carries. Kendre Miller had 11. Kendre Miller looked way better, averaging 5.9 yards per carry in this game. He also scored a touchdown in this game. Now, at the end of the day, Alvin Kamara is still the starting running back. Alvin Kamara is by far the better pass-catching running back. He just is. It's as simple as that. There's a reason why Kamara is playing 73% of the snaps in this game and seeing 69% of the routes. There's a reason why he saw a 17.8% target share, according to Ryan Heath on Twitter, right? But here's what happened this week. It happened the same week. Kendre Miller got his first 2 carries inside the 10-yard line of the season, including one drive where he subbed in for Kamara. So what happened here? Kendre Miller's seeing more usage, 11 carries to 15 carries for Kamara in this game. It's not just a one-week thing. It's slowly been trending up this way. And not only that is he seeing the usage, this past week he literally subbed in for Kamara in the red zone. Now we'll see if that continues in future weeks, but this is a guy getting more usage. There's rumors that Alvin Kamara could be traded by the trade deadline on a dead Saints team where he's probably not going to be on this team in 1 to 2 years. So make no mistake about it, Kamara is currently the RB1 here, but Kendre Miller is the guy that you want to be stashing. Look, we've seen it the past couple of weeks alone. 3 weeks ago, Cam Scadaboo now becomes a starting running back because of injury. 2 weeks ago, Trey Benson's a starting running back because of injury to James Conner. This past week, Woody Marks takes over a backfield in Houston, right? The next man up could easily be Kendre Miller. Now, the offense isn't great, but they are running a lot of plays, and he himself has been efficient. So before you have to spend 30 to 40%, if not more, of your fab on him in a week or two, why not just pick him up for free right now? Now, before we get into this next rookie wide receiver that you should consider rostering, I don't know if you know this, but I've teamed up with DraftKings Pick 6, the official daily fantasy sports partner of the NFL, and they're offering you a chance to win some real money. All right, here's what I'm talking about. Just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats, whether it's your favorite team, whether it's a guy that you like that week based on his matchup, and that allows you to unlock the upside to potentially win some real money. It's as simple as that. There's no convoluted rules. There's no gimmicks. You just pick more or less on some players, and then you watch those players perform. And now here's the best part, a little bit of a bonus for you. New DraftKings Pick 6 customers get $50 in bonus picks with just a $5 entry on your first pick set. This is your opportunity to put your football knowledge to the test. Just download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code SAL. In partnership with DraftKings Pick 6, the crown is yours. Now that rookie wide receiver, we've talked about him before, and we have to just keep talking about him because this is like the only bright spot at all from this Houston Texans offense right now, and it's Alec Imanor, the 4th round rookie wide receiver. He was coming off of 2 straight games of a 24th, wide receiver 24 finished with 15 fantasy points, wide receiver 27 finished with 13 fantasy points. He had a touchdown in back-to-back weeks. Now this past week, nothing special, right? Just 2 catches for 44 yards, but this was in a week where he led his team with 44 receiving yards. Look at how bad this offense was. They're getting no time to throw. Their creativity in terms of play calling looks atrocious. Cam Ward went 10 of 26. 10 of 26, completing like 35% of his passes, only 108 yards, 4.2 yards per attempt, sacked multiple times, pressured at like the 3rd highest rate out of any quarterback this entire year. Over 40% of his dropbacks were pressured. The offensive line is terrible. The play calling is terrible. The only guy who's even a bright spot right now in this offense is not Tony Pollard, not Calvin Ridley. It's Alec Imanor, the rookie. This past week, once again, he was out there as a full-time starter, running 90% of the routes. Once again, he was leading the target share with a 24% target share. Depending on your stat provider, it might have even been a 30% target share. There was one throwaway that they ruled his way. I mean, the offense you would assume has to get better. Calvin Ridley actually saw less usage in this game. Let's pull it up right here. Calvin Ridley in this game, he goes from being an every snap player to just 43%. From everything I saw, he didn't get injured. He actually just saw a role reduction in this game, and they used more Tyler Lockett because Ridley has been dropping passes. He's not been running the right routes. For some reason, he looks disconnected from football. Maybe it's just a small 4-game sample, or maybe he's starting to fall off. Either way, Alec Imanor has no usage or no competition, I should say. And we've already seen them be changing their play caller this past week. Hopefully, we'll see if there's like a coaching change at some point soon. Hopefully, things start to turn around for this offense. Maybe the offensive line gets healthier, because if it does, the guy who is clearly Cam Ward's favorite target should start to have some usable weeks like he did the past 2 weeks prior to this one. The next situation we're talking about is the Chiefs backfield, because these 2 guys, Kareem Hunt and definitely Brashard Smith, are available in the majority, over 60% of fantasy leagues. Smith's available in like 99% of fantasy leagues right now, and they're both pretty interesting to me. This past week, Kareem Hunt operated as the clear running back 1. Finally, the Chiefs offense with Xavier Worthy back look good. They get Rashee Rice back in a couple of weeks. Maybe it starts to look better. 13 carries for Hunt, just 7 for Pacheco, and very quietly, Brashard Smith, the rookie, sees 4 carries in this game, and he actually started to play more early in the game when it was close, not just garbage time, early in the game, and he ended up leaving this game with a 26% snap share. Now, that's nothing crazy, but it's the highest on the season for him as a 7th round rookie in his 4th ever game, seeing a 26% target share or snap share, very close to Isaiah Pacheco, only seeing 3 less carries, is interesting. Now, at the end of the day, this is a nasty 3-headed backfield where Patrick Mahomes has also been way more mobile than usual. So we can't really take anything from this right now. This is mostly just for your super deep leagues. But I can at least bring up that last year, for at least Kareem Hunt's side of things, he was a top 15 running back. Now, he was pretty gross. He was not efficient. He was averaging 3.6 yards per carry, but he was just getting a lot of touchdowns. And this past week, we saw the Chiefs offense get to the red zone a lot more and score more touchdowns. So if Kareem Hunt in these games where the Chiefs are going to play with the lead is going to get 10 to 12 carries, is going to see the red zone usage, maybe gets a target or 2, at least for your bye weeks, right? When you have to start flexes, if you're in a 2-flex league, he's somebody that can start to become in consideration and shouldn't be on waiver wires. Similar things can be said for Tyler Algier. I mean, there's no way he should be available right now in 60% of fantasy leagues. That's absolutely crazy. This is a guy who every single week goes out there in an offense that wants to run the ball, and he's not just this handcuff to Bijan Robinson. Sure, that's the case. This past week, Bijan 17 carries, Algier 16 carries. Algier scores a touchdown in this game. And this isn't just a 1-week thing. We saw this many times last year. We've seen this year. Look at week 1, right? Tyler Algier sees double-digit carries and steals a touchdown in some ways from Bijan Robinson. He is a good, productive player. That's why he gets usage. So with the bye weeks here, Algier is probably going to get 10 to 12 carries or touches next week and have some upside to score a touchdown. And then from there on, like if Bijan was, knock on wood, to go down, you're looking at a top 10 fantasy running back just like that. Another situation that's similar to Algier, although not as good of a stash, I would say, but Blake Corum is somebody that you have to keep an eye on, because this past week, Kyren Williams saw his lowest snap share of the season, 69%. Now he's still handling the majority of the backfield carries and routes, but it's at least on my radar that Blake Corum is getting more involved this year, mostly though here just in case Kyren Williams was to go down. Another opportunity like that would be Emmanuel Wilson. You saw him in the Sunday Night Football game in the 4th quarter and overtime look really good as Josh Jacobs was dealing with a knee injury. The Packers go on bye in week 5, so I do think Jacobs should be good by week 6, but it's just a reminder that Emmanuel Wilson is a quality running back. And if Josh Jacobs was to miss week 6 for some reason, or just miss some time down the stretch as a workhorse running back with a lot of carries on his body these last few seasons, Emmanuel Wilson steps into a quality offense, a quality rushing offense, where he would be the lead back and probably profile out immediately as a top 20 weekly performer. So these are the players that you should be adding as we head into week 5. Again, as the weeks go on, it's more and more important to start spending some of that fat budget, especially on guys like Woody Marks and those Giants receivers in this video. So these are the players you should be adding. But if you want to see the 10 biggest things that happen from injury standpoints to breakout players to sneaky usage changes, that's exactly what we broke down in this video. Everything just changed in fantasy football. So before week 5 starts, this will make sure that you're up to date before your friends get up to date.